longer to develop and are sometimes based on myth. This Fox News series looks at the truth behind the legend.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You think Mr. Crockett will be making it today? I don't think so. I think it'll be just like last time. Scared I'm going to win. Spent too much time in the woods. Not enough time amongst civilized human beings.
Is that Davy Crockett?
Fitzgerald, you can read all day long about the people, but you still don't know how to be with the people. You're just a pawn for Jackson and a slanderer.
You tell him, Davy! You're with us, Mr. Crockett!
Fitzgerald, you called me a liar. Any man that calls me a liar is going to get a beat.
He's got a gun!
Oh, don't worry, folks. He's harmless. Ladies and gentlemen, the famous Davy Crockett.
On the North American plains, opportunity calls men of courage to chase the sun west into a new frontier. They would shape a nation, lay hold of their destiny, and birth a new mythology. But with the passing of time, every myth has its reckoning. David Stern Crockett, a true frontiersman, a backwoods hero from the Tennessee foothills. But behind every hero stands a man, and behind every legend lies the truth.
The legend of David Crockett is that of a folk hero of the western frontier, a wild man who wrestles bears and kills Indians. But the truth is, David Crockett is no simpleton. He's an ambitious man with political aspirations that take him to the nation's capital, where he serves his country as a United States Congressman.
Wild and untamed, the Tennessee frontier is beyond the reach of all but the bravest and hardiest of men. Frontiersmen like David Crockett, daring, adventurous, and bold.
Knew that bear wanted to hug me, so I reckon here's his chance.
Why'd you put down your rifle?
Shoot, quarters are too close for old Betsy. Besides, I'm just as good with a knife. It was here that I began to distinguish myself as a hunter and to lay the foundation for my future greatness. Now, another time when I was just a cub, I can recall
Crockett's a jokester, he's remarkably funny, and he's affable. People like him.
be about 6 or 7 by the creek, running into another bar.
Well, Tennessee at the time was still the American frontier.
You got wild animals, you got fights, and it was in this world where there's no kind of solid established law that David Crockett, begins the process of becoming the myth. David Crockett, a third-generation frontiersman, is born just 10 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. His father is a hero of the Revolutionary War.
David's father, John Crockett, is what's called an over-mountain man. Over-mountain men are settlers on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains. They oppose British rule and come east to join their fellow Americans to fight in the Revolutionary War. With such a father, it's no surprise that David Crockett becomes an American patriot.
Here, boy, gather up this wood here and take it on in the house.
Contrary to legend, David Crockett never actually goes by Davy. Even as a child, he prefers David, the name given to him in honor of his dead grandfather, who was killed by Creek Indians.
Frontier life is a constant struggle, and the family farm bankrupts the Crockett's. To pay his debts, John is forced to make a difficult decision.
Here's my boy. His name's David. Shake his hand, boy.
Davy Crockett becomes what is known as a bound boy. It's really a form of indentured service to pay off a debt. It's slightly above being a slave. This had a significant impact on Crockett.
We shouldn't, as modern people, judge John Crockett too harshly. The role of children in the early 19th century is vastly different than it is now.
The work is grueling, but David makes the best of a difficult situation. He knows education is his best shot at escaping poverty, and later trades more work on the farm to pay for basic tutoring.
Boy, get back to work.
That's the only education Crockett ever had. But in that time, he says, I learned how to read, I learned how to write, and I learned how to cipher.
After a year working off his family's debt, David is finally granted his freedom and continues a practical education that will catapult him to great notoriety.
It's time for you to come over there.
It's a rite of passage, a tool men use to provide and protect. A symbol of independence and freedom. One Crockett grows to cherish.
Crockett would not have been anything without the Tennessee long rifle. It's not a military weapon. It is designed as a hunting weapon.
Crockett's reputation on the frontier as a skilled hunter with deadly aim earns him more than just admiration from his fellow riflemen.
He was intensely loyal. When he was out hunting, he would always share the meat of his hunts with neighbors or people in need.
In 1806, David marries a local girl named Polly Finley. They rent a farm and settle down. But like his father, Crockett struggles to feed his growing family.
I found that farming wasn't what it was cracked up to be. It was therefore more necessary that I should hunt to get along.
David is not only esteemed among the other hunters of the region, he's putting money in his pocket and food on the table.
Crockett trades on his hunting skills, keeping his family fed and out of debt. He now has status and respectability. life worth fighting for.
Now, one time in the dead of winter, I almost froze.
Creek Indians attacked Fort Mims out Alabama way. 500 are dead.
Creeks. During the War of 1812, Creek Indians attacked Fort Mims. The massacre leaves 500 men, women, and children dead. Many of them trapped and burned alive.
If every man waited for his wife to be willing for him to go to war, we'd all be killed in our homes.
David Crockett has found his call to glory. But to answer it, he must risk his life and leave his family alone on the frontier.
Bye, son.
This is what men do at the time. This is how armies are built. Your wife, your children, your farm, your life, all become secondary. The call to duty comes first.
The call to war sets Crockett's life on a course that will have him clinging to his ideals as firmly as he grips his musket. By 1812, America has been a sovereign nation for more than 30 years. But the Creek Nation, allied with the British, attacks the newly United States over unclaimed land. Fighting breaks out on the frontier and spreads throughout Alabama, Tennessee's neighbor to the south.
In 1813, the Creek Indian tribe was supplied with the firearms and gunpowder from the British to help them in the War of 1812 to try to defeat the Americans. 300 settlers and approximately 250 militia were all herded together in Fort Mims, and they were massacred by the Creeks.
David Crockett is among the first to volunteer and becomes a scout with the Tennessee militia to hunt down the Creeks.
These are the people who murdered his grandparents. These are the people who forced Crockett to leave a loving wife and family. Now we have David Crockett, the soldier, for the first time in his life.
Leading the militia and advancing on the Creeks is a man known for being as ambitious as he is arrogant, General Andrew Jackson.
David Crockett is serving under Jackson. There were tremendous atrocities committed under Andrew Jackson's orders against the Creek people.
Jackson orders a surprise attack on the Creek village of Tallusahatchee. But experiencing the brutalities of war firsthand has an unexpected effect on Crockett.
Crockett, he was pretty traumatized by some of the events in the Creek War. He was not a killer. He wasn't a violent person.
Unlike the general he serves under, he recognizes the humanity of the impressive Creek warriors. He admires their strength in battle and their courage in the face of death.
The legend of David Crockett is that he's a fierce Indian fighter, taming the wild frontier with heroics in battle. But the truth is, he only kills when he has to. The intimacy of battle shows Crockett has more in common with Native American warriors than he does with most military men.
Andrew Jackson's militia engages in another battle. But when hundreds of Creeks escape, Jackson is enraged. He's determined to destroy his enemy, no matter the cost to his men.
Jackson kept on pushing them to the point where they ran out of supplies. If we were actually to apply the rules of war to Andrew Jackson's campaign, he'd probably be considered a war criminal.
Requesting permission for leave to get food and other needs.
We don't have the time to get anything, Scout.
Sir, the men...
Dismissed.
Andrew Jackson called up the militia. He says, now guys, it's going to be rough. We're going to go hungry some days. If anybody deserts, I'm going to prescribe the penalty for that, which is death by firing.
How you boys doing?
Crockett and a number of others decide, what the hell, man, we gotta get some supplies here. So, in defiance of Jackson's orders, they march right out to requisition some supplies.
We all had our flints ready picked and our guns ready primed. That if we were fired upon, we would fight our way through or all die together.
As your commanding officer, I order you to return to camp.
First, be sure that you're right, and then go the hell ahead.
You volunteer, go out and fight, and at your pleasure, you volunteer to go home again.
I volunteer to do for your men what you will not.
Even as a volunteer, Crockett risks being court-martialed. Still, he takes the 500-mile round-trip journey from Fort Deposit to Winchester and back, and returns with supplies and food.
Here you go, boys.
Crockett took credit in his autobiography of being one of the volunteers who ignored Jackson's order for them to stay in camp. Historians disagree on this. I doubt if he would have put something in his autobiography that others could have read and known it was false.
His unit and Jackson's part ways. There is no record of Crockett being charged with desertion. The war has changed the country and the man. Crockett returns to a life that will never be the same. Polly, his wife and mother of 3, is near death with an unknown sickness. Building a prosperous frontier life, Crockett fights to defend his home and country. The War of 1812 is over in March of 1815 after a treaty is signed between America and the British. Upon his return, Crockett finds his young wife Polly on her deathbed. Within months, she's gone.
Death entered my humble cottage and tore from my children an affectionate and good mother, and took from me a tender and loving wife.
Crockett struggles after Polly's death and sets out as a widower to forge a new path for himself and his children. But before long, Crockett is presented with an unusual opportunity.
America is changing as the War of 1812 comes to an end. Self-made men like David Crockett enter politics and appeal to the public more than traditional moneyed candidates. Crockett's reputation as a frontiersman and soldier make him a standout candidate.
Hey, my young man, you gonna go hunting with me one of these days? I bet you can hunt a good bear.
A successful career in politics is unlikely for a widower with 3 kids. Fate lends a hand when he meets and soon marries Elizabeth Patton, a widow with 2 small children of her own.
May I ask you where you come from?
Right here.
Elizabeth lost her husband in the Creek War. She has a substantial dowry, more than enough to finance her new husband's political career. Crockett's first campaign is against a local militia captain for the office of lieutenant colonel.
I'm Captain Matthews, and with my experience, the great state of Tennessee can only benefit from my knowledge of the intricacies of politics.
Intricacies of politics? It's your people that create intricacies in politics. Yeah, I think these people need to be better served by somebody of their own kind. It's hot as blazes out here. I bet you all are thirsty. You need to wet our whistle. I hope I get your vote.
David falls in love with politics and introduces a new style of campaigning.
You got my vote.
Yes, sir. Good.
One that includes whiskey drinking and storytelling.
David Crockett was a politician. The frontiersman was part of his image-making campaign in order to get elected to a population that did not want to hear from the old-time politicians.
After dabbling in local politics, Crockett makes a bid for a seat in the Tennessee legislature. As he builds momentum, his detractors begin mocking him in the press, referring to him as the gentleman from the cane.
The phrase gentleman from the cane just referred to the unexplored areas where Crockett lived, and it's construed as redneck or backwoodsman.
Crockett immerses himself in his campaign and wins a seat in the Tennessee State Assembly. Before long, his support of local farmers puts him at odds with James Mitchell, a prominent lawyer.
This bill will not work. It will not be agriculturally productive. And that, my esteemed colleagues, is why we will not countenance this motion. No matter how much Assemblyman Crockett claims, it will be a boon to local farmers.
I reckon I'd like to rebut you, Mitchell. I don't have the words, but I'd still like to say my own piece. My fellow colleagues, we will not, we cannot, we shall not countenance this motion. Did I offend your delicate sensibilities, Mitchell?
David Crockett becomes the voice of the struggling classes. Laborers, tradesmen, pioneers, and farmers. Those building America into the powerhouse it is becoming. But in the process, he's criticizing leading Democrats, including Andrew Jackson's inner circle.
As it turned out, Crockett wasn't trying to criticize Jackson, but Jackson took it so personally, he said, I'm going to crush this little pipsqueak.
Crockett's growing popularity in independent politics puts him at odds with the party leadership. Andrew Jackson, now the Democrats' presidential frontrunner, has his old scout in his sights.
Andrew Jackson was once involved in a duel, someone had insulted him, he went into that duel determined to not only hit his opponent, but kill his opponent. If Jackson told you he was going to kill you, you best get your affairs in order.
So Jackson and the Democrats see trouble on the horizon. David Crockett, if he goes on to higher office, he can really cause us trouble in the future. We got to tar him now.
After 2 successful terms in the state legislature, Crockett comes up short in his first bid for Congress. Out of a job and deep in campaign debt, David Crockett is forced to return home in defeat. After losing his first run for Congress, David Crockett heads home looking for work. Andrew Jackson, known as Old Hickory for his toughness, is rising through the Senate on his way to the White House. Desperate to climb out of debt and finance his next campaign, Crockett takes on a risky business venture. While transporting his goods, a boating accident costs him a fortune in inventory and almost his life.
As I live and breathe, David Crockett. Yeah, I tried to bring some wares down Ole Miss, but I ain't ever been on that river.
Nah, don't you worry about that, Mr. Crockett. Somebody get him a blanket.
After barely making it to shore, he meets a wealthy businessman from Memphis named Marcus Winchester. With the help of Winchester's financial backing, a group opposed to the Democrats decides Crockett is their man to go to Washington and help them dethrone Andrew Jackson. Crockett accepts their offer. The group eventually forms the Whig Party.
Ladies and gentlemen, so one time I faced off with a mountain lion with a water moccasin crawling up my leg. I had to choose which one was the bigger threat, and I had to go after him first. Today, that threat is Old Hickory.
Crockett has made a remarkable journey, from bound boy to the United States Congress. And now with his eyes on the White House, he wastes no time ruffling feathers.
Andrew Jackson has a near singular focus, passing the Indian Removal Act, which will relocate numerous Native American tribes to reservations farther west. Even though the act will greatly benefit his Tennessee constituency, David Crockett has strong moral objections to forcing Native people from their ancestral lands.
A bill to provide for the removal of certain Indians from any territory of the United States west of the Mississippi. How do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I say aye.
Aye. I vote aye.
Mr. Crockett.
Nay.
Given his history with the Indians, it is remarkable that he had the humanity in him to be their defender, to go up against Andrew Jackson.
Crockett's voice infuriates the Jackson Dems, who once again target his campaign.
William Fitzgerald was a candidate handpicked to bring down Crockett. And ironically, he used some of the same folksy, down-home tactics that Crockett had mastered against him successfully, which annoyed Crockett.
Any man that calls me a liar is going to get a beat. Think you might want to take a step back, Congressman Crockett?
Crockett's refusal to stand up to Fitzgerald leaves voters confused. Their disappointment shows at the ballot box.
Ladies and gentlemen, the famous Davy Crockett.
Crockett bounces in and out of Congress for the next 4 years. After losing one final election, he begins to look elsewhere for opportunity. The Republic of Texas has become the new land of promise. Americans move southwest, staking claim to rich Mexican soil in Texas. Ousted politicians like Sam Houston make the new republic an opportunity to revive their political ambitions.
I'd rather be beaten and be a man than to be elected and be a little puppy dog. Since you have chosen to elect a man with a timber toe to succeed me, you may all go to hell. I'm going to Texas.
Crockett, the politician, is defeated and disillusioned. But Crockett, the frontiersman, is looking for new adventures and a fresh new start. Leaving his wife and kids behind, Crockett sets out looking for a new family home.
Crockett, he's this failed politician. He is got no kind of political future as far as he can see in Tennessee. And so where the hell can he get elected to office? Well, Texas is a possibility.
My dear son and daughter, this is the first time I've had an opportunity to write to you with convenience. I've got through safe and have been received by everybody with an open arm of friendship.
The Texians were essentially the Anglo settlers in Mexican Texas. They had started coming in the last days of the Spanish regime and the first days of the new Mexican Republic. These guys were coming to Texas in order to make Texas into a new America.
But Mexico and General Santa Anna stand in the way. Crockett meets with an old friend from his Washington days, Sam Houston, commander of the Texian Army.
Politics, we did that. This is war. I've selected 65 excellent riflemen. They'll be under your command. I want you to take them down to San Antonio de Bejar and reinforce the garrison there and hold it. What do you say?
Sam, I'd be happy and honored to fight for the future of the Republic of Texas.
Sam Houston dispatches Crockett to a garrison known by the Mexicans as El Alamo. In 1836, victory over Mexico feels close at hand for the men fighting for a sovereign Texas. Only months before David Crockett arrives in San Antonio, Texian soldiers drive out Mexican troops, seizing control of a former mission, now a military fortress called the Alamo.
For the Texians, the Alamo is really about what has been accumulated there. There's lots and lots of guns.
But for the Mexican military, El Alamo represents something very different. General Santa Anna is the supreme commander of the Mexican army. Known as the Napoleon of the West, the general is enraged when he receives word the Texians have taken over El Alamo.
Y'all halt right there and state your business. We're volunteers from the United States, here to fight for the Republic of Texas. Open the gates up.
Santa Anna is determined to take back what belongs to Mexico, and he sees only one way to do it.
If you're going to teach these Texians a lesson, you need to teach them that lesson at the Alamo.
Numerous women and children, as well as over 100 Texian soldiers, are hunkered down inside the walls of the Alamo. Crockett takes his place as a private, under the command of 2 men.
You have William Barrett Travis, who's in charge of the Texas Regulars. And then you have Jim Bowie, who's in charge of the Volunteers.
The Texians are expecting a fight at the Alamo. They just don't expect it this soon. At the time, Mexico is in turmoil, with pockets of civil war breaking out across the country. Believing General Santa Anna has his hands full, the Texians do not suspect an immediate threat. Of course, they couldn't be more wrong.
Rider coming in! Colonel Travis!
Santa Anna advances north. He'll make San Antonio very hard to visualize.
We're gonna need a whole lot of reinforcements.
Travis gets the message, and he discounts this information. Travis doesn't expect the Mexicans to show up until spring, and he's got people like Crockett and his rifle.
Well aware of the advancing Mexican army, Crockett has a small window to escape, but he has no intention of retreating.
Take note. When this war is won, and Texas has achieved her independence, these people are going to need a strong leader. And I intend to give them what they need.
The Texians have indeed misjudged General Santa Anna. For weeks he's been assembling an army of nearly 2,000 soldiers. On February 23rd, 1836, General Santa Anna and his troops arrive at San Antonio and begin surrounding the Alamo.
So the first thing he does is try to scare them. Raises a black flag with no quarter.
The no quarter flag sends a chilling message to the Texians.
None of you will be spared.
And he sets his guns up in strategic position to begin bombarding the Alamo.
Manden algunos soldados para probar sus defensas. Apúrense. Davy!
What people need to understand about the Battle of the Alamo is that it is a siege. And this battle lasted 13 days.
The Mexican soldiers are forced to retreat. Crockett is living up to his reputation. For now. March 5th, 1836. David Crockett and some 200 Texians are under siege at the Alamo. For 12 days, they fight off a steady barrage of gunfire. Starving, sleep-deprived, and outnumbered more than 10 to 1, they refuse to surrender and are prepared to fight until death. Santa Anna informs his men that they will storm the Alamo in the morning.
So he was willing to send a political message both to the United States and to the people of Mexico, using the blood of his men as the ink for this missive. He had some special assault troops that came up, the Zapadores. These guys came in determined to knock down walls and knock in doors.
Musket! Musket!
25 different accounts of how Crockett died at the Alamo. There's no way to know, because there are no credible witnesses to it. All I can tell you is Crockett became a Texas icon by dying here. He was actually only in Texas 2 months before he met his death at the Alamo.
Of all the accomplishments in his 49 years, it's his death at the Alamo that secures the myth of David Crockett.
In the days leading up to the siege at the Alamo, David Crockett is free to leave, but instead he chooses to stay and fight for the liberation of Texas. Rather than retreat as a coward, he fights heroically to live up to an image created by the popular culture of his time. In death, David Crockett is able to become what he never could